Hi everyone, this is on IA and I am Michelle Pini, and today we will be speaking with investigative journalist, editor of the Klaxon and contributor to IA, Anthony Klan. Welcome, Anthony.
Hi Michelle, good to be here.
Great to have you. And so we're just talking today really about the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet being drawn into the ongoing ICAC investigation in New South Wales. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of the story so far?
Yeah, so Dominic Perrottet was treasurer when the deal went through. Now, he hasn't been, until this week, until we've run the stories this week at least, he hasn't been the centre of much attention regarding the scandal. We know Gladys stood down earlier in the month after ICAC on October 1st announced that she was under investigation. There's no findings against her, and the proceedings are ongoing, and ICAC hasn't made any findings, just to make that clear. But Dominic Perrottet stood in as Premier. Now, we've gone through a bunch of documents, government records, etc. And we've ascertained that it was in fact Dominic Perrottet who, as New South Wales Treasurer, signed off on this $5.5 million gun club loan. So that in itself is very interesting. So ICAC hasn't said that anyone's under investigation other than Gladys Berejiklian and her secret longtime partner, Daryl Maguire. What's interesting is we've had hearings all week. We've got hearings at least all next week. ICAC said it's going to be for 10 days, but these things can go further. So on the witness list so far, Mr. Perrottet doesn't appear on that witness list. That doesn't mean he won't be called. We're not sure. But the evidence we've run this week showing that the Treasurer signed off on it. Now we have confirmation of that, which is new. And that's part of a story that we'll be sharing collectively tomorrow. But I think one of the main things that came out of the ICAC this week, and we got this material from filings with ICAC. So ICAC, as the public hearings unfold, it puts up evidence to its site, basically. So we're digging through there. And in there, we've come across an email between about 7 senior staff within the New South Wales government across 3 different departments.
Wow.
And they're discussing this gun club grant in early 2017. Just, it's not looking good.
No.
But they say in there, look, it does need the Treasurer to approve it. And so that's what sort of led us further down that path. And
so it might be easier to do a story on who in the New South Wales government wasn't involved in this gun club scandal.
Yeah, Rob, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of names and a lot of emails that have already been tendered, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure, is the amount of information they've got. Now, they're only going to want to put out, they only put out what they think needs to be put out. I mean, they're not just putting out a whole bunch of information, but the information that is out there or that they have felt the need to publish is very important, and it just goes to why we need an ICAC, and it does such a great job.
Absolutely, and a federal ICAC hopefully would be a good thing.
Well, precisely, and I mean, and I mean, if there's nothing to see, and there's no wrongdoing, then great, and we'll hear all about that. But as we said, the hearings are ongoing.
Yep, and so just regarding the story that we've run so far. How is it that you came about this information regarding Dominic Perrottet's involvement?
Yeah, so this was in the ICAC documents that they've uploaded. So I've gone through there and just sort of in between the email correspondence essentially, and sort of lining it up and say, hang on, the Treasurer they're talking about is Dominic Perrottet, who is the Premier now.
Yes.
So yeah, and so what we've also ascertained is that, so we know that Premier Berejiklian as Treasurer put this to the Expenditure Review Committee in late December 2016. Now, the following month, Mike Baird resigned from politics. So Gladys Berejiklian became New South Wales Premier, and then she appointed Dominic Perrottet as Treasurer. And so it's that period that's of extreme interest and importance, I'd say, from January 2017 to August 2017, when Mr. Perrottet, as Treasurer, signed off on the document. So what happened there? So we've got email correspondence about what happened there, and it's all about, the inside parties are discussing some pretty major concerns with the deal.
And it also may involve Deputy Premier or former Deputy Premier John Barilaro, I believe.
Yes, yes. There's obviously, well, there's certainly a connection there because he has been called to give evidence next week. He's on the witness list that's been released on the last couple of days. So it'll be interesting to see what his connection is specifically, but we do know that he was involved. I mean, we've got quite a bit of information that he was connected to it in some capacity, but it'll be interesting to know exactly what that was, because there's not much information in the public sphere that really firms up too much of that as yet.
But it is interesting, though, isn't it, that Gladys Berejiklian resigned, John Barilaro resigned, but Dominic Perrottet, who ostensibly is also involved in this investigation, has continued and in fact was appointed Premier, or sworn in as Premier. And we assume that if the information is correct, that it was more than likely that he would also be called before the same ICAC hearing. So
exactly, it'd be extremely surprising if he wasn't called, given that so many other people have been called and he was the person that signed the document. And he is also the person as Treasurer. Now, this is written into the legislation. There's the Restart New South Wales Fund, which is the New South Wales major infrastructure fund. It's been going for about 10 years. It's a rolling infrastructure fund. Now, all of these grants were made through that. So there are smaller funds within that overarching umbrella fund. Mm-hmm. Now, all of the funds that go into or out of that Restart New South Wales Fund have to meet certain criteria and have to be signed off by the Treasurer. The Treasurer is solely responsible for that fund. So it doesn't matter what other information he's been given or what other approvals, the buck stops with him, and it's literally in the legislation that it's him. So it'd be very difficult. It'd be very surprising if he wasn't called, at least to explain what his side of the story is, and it might be completely explainable, but it'll be interesting to see.
And so why do you think this is such an important story, Anthony?
Well, it's such an important story because it goes to the heart of who's governing our money and what they're doing with it. And so we've already seen the huge amount of waste that goes on with pork barrelling, which is governments giving funds to the marginal electorates or electorates, basically securing themselves power at the expense of good governance and distributing collective taxpayer funds equitably. So that's a major problem. Now, this issue, this gun club grant, I mean, it seems a bit esoteric, this, Wagga Wagga gun club grant, but it really is an important case study because it appears to be extremely egregious in the term, and I'm saying that in terms of the evidence that's been given so far, at least, in that you've got this push for this grant against what the hearings have heard so far, against good governance, against general good practices, and it appears to be quite an egregious example. So it is very important that these things are highlighted and those that have done the wrong thing are held accountable. Absolutely, and there's more to be heard about that, or to be read about that tomorrow, I believe. There is. Yes. Yeah. All right. All right. So thank you so much, Anthony, for being part of it, and look out for that story tomorrow on IA. And all right. Good to speak to you, Michelle. Thank you. Bye. Thanks so much.